Hi everyone, and welcome back to The Giver. Today we are going to do chapter 6, and then at the end we're going to have some reading comprehension questions. Yeah, I almost forgot. I almost forgot what I have at the end of the video. I'm looking at it on my computer right here, so. But today we are going to read chapter 6, and hopefully we will figure out a little bit more about what's going on in this very strange community, right? It's weird, okay? It's weird. It's weird, you know? Yeah. So let's get started with chapter 6. Here we go. Lily, please hold still, Mother said again. Lily, standing in front of her, fidgeted impatiently. I can tie them myself, she complained. I always have. I know that, Mother replied, straightening. See how he threw away that T in the middle? Straightening. Straightening the hair ribbons on the little girl's braids. But I also know that they constantly come loose, and more often than not, they're dangling down your back by afternoon. Today, at least, we want them to be neatly tied and to stay neatly tied. So, Mom's fixing the Is it Mom? Is it Mom? She's not really the mom. She's the female caregiver. That's weird, right? Okay. I don't like hair ribbons. I'm glad I only have to wear them one more year. Lily said irritably. Next year, I get my bicycle too, she added more cheerfully. Whew. There are good things each year, Jonas reminded her. This year, you get to start your volunteer hours. And remember last year, when you became a 7, you were so happy to get your front buttoned jacket. You know, it's the little things in life, right? Your front button jacket. The little girl nodded and looked down at herself, at the jacket with this row of large buttons that designated, remember the S's in the middle sometimes are Z's, designated her as a 7. 4s, 5s, and 6s all wore jackets that fastened down the back so that they would have to help each other dress and would learn interdependence. Inter means together. Interdependence. The front button jacket was the first sign of independence. Oh, so she can do it by herself. Squint at it. The first very visible symbol of growing up. The bicycle at 9 would be the powerful emblem, right? Like certificate or proof, you know, look at me, maybe a badge of honor or something. Emblem of moving gradually out into the community, away from the protective family unit, right? See, not mom and dad, family unit. Lily grinned and wriggled away from her mother. I said mom, but yeah, where'd it go? And this year you get your assignment, she said to Jonas in an excited voice. I hope you get pilot and that you take me flying. That'd be kind of cool job. Sure I will, said Jonas, and I'll get a special little parachute that just fits you, and I'll take you up too. Oh, maybe 20,000 feet, and open the door and... Jonas, Mother warned. I was only joking. At least they have fun, right? Jonas groaned. I don't want to pilot anyway. If I get pilot, I'll put in an appeal. Oh, because he doesn't want to be one. Come on, Mother said. She gave Lily's ribbons a final tug. Jonas, are you ready? Did you take your pill? I want to get a good seat at the auditorium. She prodded Lily to the front door, and Jonas followed. It was a short ride to the auditorium, Lily waving to her friends from her seat on the back of Mother's bicycle. Jonas stowed his bicycle beside Mother's and made his way through the throng, like group, to find his group. So there's a bunch of people outside. He made it through the throng to find his group. The entire community attended the ceremony each year. For the parents, it meant 2 days holiday from work. They sat together in the huge hall. Children sat with their groups until they went one by one to the stage. Father, I thought it said farther. Father, though, would not join Mother in the audience right away. For the earliest ceremony, the naming, the nurturers brought the new children to the stage. Jonas, from his place on the balcony with the 11s, searched the auditorium for a glimpse of Father. It's weird how it says father and not his father, his mother. There's no ownership, right? Like, this is my mom. But he just says father, mother. Ugh. Okay, anyways. It wasn't at all hard to spot the nurturers section at the front. Coming from it were the wails and howls of the new children who sat squirming on the nurturers' laps. At every other public ceremony, the audience was silent and attentive. But once a year, they all smiled indulgently at the commotion from the little ones waiting to receive their names and families. Jonas finally caught his father's eye and waved. Oh, he did say ownership. Okay, his father. Okay. Father grinned and waved back, then held up the hand of the new child on his lap, making it wave too. It wasn't Gabriel. Gabe was back at the nurturing center today, being cared for by the night crew. He had been given an unusual and special reprieve. Reprieve, right? Allowance, escape, permission to not be there. Special reprieve from the committee, and granted an additional year of nurturing before his naming and placement. Father had gone before the committee with a plea on behalf of Gabriel, who had not yet gained the weight appropriate to this day of life, nor begun to sleep soundly enough at night to be placed with his family unit. So he wasn't big enough? Yeah. Normally, such a new child would be labeled inadequate, messed up, and released from the community. You fail as a baby. Maybe that's what they do. Instead, as a result of Father's plea, Gabriel had been labeled uncertain and given the additional year. He would continue to be nurtured at the center and would spend his nights with Jonas's family unit. Each family member, including Lily, had been required to sign a pledge that they would not become attached to this little temporary guest, and that they would relinquish him without protest or appeal when he was assigned to his own family unit at next year's ceremony. They made everyone sign a piece of paper saying, "Nope, it's cool. You can take the baby. We don't want it. We're not attached." Yeah. At least, Jonas thought, after Gabriel was placed next year, they would still see him often because he would be part of the community. If he were released, they would not see him again. Ever. Those who were released, even as new children, were sent elsewhere. Elsewhere. So we know there's a name for this place outside of the community where they throw these people, right? Elsewhere. It doesn't help you know what it is, but elsewhere, well, at least we found a name for this place, were sent elsewhere and never returned to the community. Father had not had to release a single new child this year, so Gabriel would have represented a real failure and sadness. Even Jonas, though he didn't hover over the little one the way Lily and his father did, was glad that Gabe had not been released. The first ceremony began right on time, and Jonas watched as one after another, each new child was given a name and handed, by the nurturers, to its new family unit. For some, it was a first child, but many came to the stage accompanied together with by another child beaming with pride to receive a little brother or sister the way Jonas had when he was about to be a 5. Asher poked Jonas's arm. Remember when we got Philippa? Philippa. Yeah. Philippa? Flippa. No, I was kidding. Philippa, he asked in a loud whisper. Jonas nodded. It had only been last year. Asher's parents had waited quite a long time before applying for a second child. Maybe, Jonas suspected, they had been so tired, by Asher's lively foolishness that they had needed a little time. So Asher was a problem child. And they're like, well, we need a few more years before we take another kid. 2 of their group, Fiona and another female named Thea, or Thea, either one, were missing temporarily, waiting with their parents to receive new children. But it was rare that there was such an age gap between children in a family unit. When her family ceremony was completed, Fiona took the seat that had been saved for her in the row ahead of Asher and Jonas. She turned and whispered to them, "He's cute. I don't like his name very much." She made a face and giggled. Fiona's new brother had been named Bruno. Okay, fair enough, Bruno. It wasn't a great name, Jonas thought, like Gabriel, for example, but it was okay. The audience applause, which was enthusiastic at each naming, rose in an exuberant swell. So it got really loud, yo! When one parental pair, glowing with pride, took a male new child and heard him named Caleb. This new Caleb was a replacement child. What? The couple had lost their first Caleb, a cheerful... Wow! So what happened is their first kid was named Caleb, and apparently it died when it was 4. So the community said, here's a new Caleb, and everybody's happy. Yeah, that's totally normal. The community was, loss of a child was very, very rare. The community was extraordinarily safe, each citizen watchful and protective of all new children. But somehow the first little Caleb had wandered away unnoticed and had fallen into the river. The entire community had performed the ceremony of loss together, murmuring the name Caleb throughout an entire day, less and less frequently, softer in volume as the long and somber means sad, day went on, so that the little 4 seemed to fade away gradually from everyone's consciousness. So in the beginning of the day, they would say Caleb, Caleb. And by the middle of the day, they would say Caleb. And by the end of the day, they would say Caleb. It's kind of weird, kind of nice. I don't know how I feel, but there are feelings. It's weird. Now at this special naming, the community performed the brief murmur of replacement ceremony. Come on, it's so weird. The brief murmur of replacement ceremony, repeating the name for the first time since the lost, softly and slowly at first, then faster and with greater volume as the couple stood on the stage with the new child sleeping in the mother's arms. It was as if the first Caleb were returning. Another new child was given the name Roberto, and Jonas remembered that Roberto, the old, had been released only last week. But there was no murmur of replacement ceremony for the new little Roberto. Release was not the same as loss. He sat politely through the ceremonies of 2 and 3 and 4, increasingly bored as he was each year. Then a break for midday meal, served outdoors, and back again to the seats for the 5s, 6s, 7s, and finally, last of the first day's ceremonies, the eights. Jonas watched and cheered as Lily marched proudly to the stage, became an 8, and received the identifying jacket that she would wear this year, this one with smaller buttons and, for the first time, pockets, indicating that she was mature enough, so she was old enough, now to keep track of her own small belongings. So she never could keep stuff on her. There were no pockets. But now she's old enough. Here's some pockets. That's weird. She stood solemnly, right? This is an important thing. We be serious. Solemnly listening to the speech of firm instructions on the responsibilities of 8 and doing volunteer hours for the first time. But Jonas could see that Lily, though she seemed attentive, was looking longingly at the row of gleaming bicycles which would be presented tomorrow morning to the 9s. Next year, Lily Billy, Jonas thought. Oh, he's got a cute name for her. So he has feelings for this girl who's his sister but not his sister, in his family but not his family. It was an exhausting day, and even Gabriel, retrieved in his basket from the nurturing center, slept soundly that night. Finally, it was the morning of the ceremony of 12. Here we go. Dun, dun, dun. Now father sat beside mother in the audience. Jonas could see them applauding dutifully, like they have to, they're supposed to, dutifully, as the 9s, one by one, wheeled their new bicycles, each with its gleaming name tag attached to the back from the stage. He knew that his parents cringed a little, as he did when Fritz, who lived in the dwelling next door to theirs, received his bike and almost immediately bumped into the podium with it. Fritz was a very awkward child who had been summoned for chastisement, right? No. They yell at him again and again. His transgressions means problems, the things he did wrong. His transgressions were small ones, always. Shoes on the wrong feet. What? Schoolwork misplaced. Failure to study adequately for a quiz. But each such error, that was hard to say, each such error reflected negatively on his parents' guidance and infringed on the community's sense of order and success. Jonas and his family had not been looking forward to Fritz's bicycle. So the kid's kind of a klutz. He's not really, not really all there. So his parents have a bad reputation because of it, which they realized would probably too often be dropped on the front walk instead of wheeled neatly into its port. Finally, the 9s were all resettled in their seats, each having wheeled a bicycle outside where it would be waiting for its owner at the end of the day. Everyone always chuckled and made small jokes when the 9s rode home for the first time. "Want me to show you how to ride?" older friends would call. "I know you've never been on a bike before." But invariably, like always, the grinning 9s, who in technical violation of the rule had been practicing secretly for weeks, would mount and ride off in perfect balance, training wheels never touching the ground. Then the 10s. Jonas never found the ceremony of 10s particularly interesting, only time-consuming, as each child's hair was cut, neatly into its distinguishing cut. Females lost their braids at 10, and males too relinquished their long childish hair and took on the more manly short style which exposed their ears. Ooh. Laborers moved quickly to the stage with brooms and swept away the mounds of discarded hair. Jonas could see the parents of the new 10s stir and murmur, and he knew that this evening, in many dwellings, they would be snipping and straightening the hastily done haircuts. So the haircuts were cut so fast, they're not very good, so the parents have to fix it, trimming them into a neater line. 11s. It seemed a short time ago that Jonas had undergone the ceremony of 11, but he remembered that it was not one of the more interesting ones. By 11, one was only waiting to be 12. It was simply a marking of time with no meaningful changes. There was new, what? There was new clothing, different undergarments for the females whose bodies were beginning to change, and longer trousers for the males with a specially shaped pocket for the small calculator that they would use this year in school. But those were simply presented in wrapped packages without any accompanying speech. Break for midday meal, Jonas realized he was hungry. He and his group mates congregated by the tables in front of the auditorium and took their packaged food. Yesterday there had been merriment, happy merriment at lunch, a lot of teasing and energy, but today the group stood anxiously separate from the other children. Jonas watched the new nines gravitate towards their waiting bicycles, moving towards their bicycles, right? Ooh, I got a bike. Each one admiring his or her name tag. He saw the tens stroking their new shortened hair, females shaking their head to feel the unaccustomed, they weren't used to it, unaccustomed lightness without the heavy braids they had worn so long. I heard about a guy who was absolutely certain he was going to be assigned engineer, Asher muttered as they ate, and instead they gave him sanitation laborer. Nothing wrong with that, but it's funny. He thought he was going to be an engineer, but now he's cleaning the floors and stuff. He went out the next day, jumped into the river, swam across, and joined the next community he came to. Nobody ever saw him again. What? So there's communities outside of theirs, plus that elsewhere that we heard about today. Jonas laughed. Somebody made that story up, Ash, he said. My father said he heard that story when he was a 12. But Asher wasn't reassured. He was eyeing the river where it was visible behind the auditorium. I can't even swim very well, he said. My swimming instructor said that I don't have the right boyishness or something. What? Buoyancy. Buoyancy. Jonas corrected him. Buoyancy means you can float. Whatever, I don't have it. I sink. Anyways, Jonas pointed out, have you ever once known of anyone, I mean really known for sure, Asher, not just heard a story about it, who joined another community? No, Asher admitted reluctantly. But you can. It says so in the rules. If you don't fit in, you can apply for elsewhere and be released. My mother says that once, about 10 years ago, someone applied and was gone the next day. Then he chuckled. She told me that because I was driving her crazy. She threatened to apply for elsewhere. She was joking. I know, but it was true what she said, that someone did that once. She said it was really true. Here today and gone tomorrow. Never seen again. Not even a ceremony of release. It's kind of sad. Jonas shrugged. It didn't worry him. How could someone not fit in? The ceremony was so meticulously, very carefully ordered. The choices so carefully made. Carefully, see? Even the matching of spouses was given such weighty consideration that sometimes an adult who applied to receive a spouse waited months or even years before a match was approved and announced. All of the factors, disposition, like how they were, what was their attitude, energy level, intelligence, and interests had to correspond and to interact perfectly. Jonas's mother, for example, had higher intelligence than his father, but his father had a calmer disposition. They balanced each other. Their match, which like all matches, had been monitored by the committee of elders for 3 years before they could apply for children, had always been a successful one. Like the matching of spouses and the naming of, these are hard. Like the matching of spouses and the naming and placement of new children, the assignments were scrupulously, carefully thought through by the committee of elders. He was certain that his assignment, whatever it was to be, and Asher's too, would be right for one of them. Wait, what? No. He was certain that his assignment, whatever it was to be, and Asher's too, would be the right one for them. He only wished that the midday break would conclude, that the audience would re-enter the auditorium, and the suspense would end. As if in answer to his unspoken wish, the signal came and the crowd began to move towards the doors. That was a long chapter, very, very long indeed, but we learned a lot of interesting stuff, especially about how the community works and how responsibilities change as the children got older, right? We learned more about how couples were matched and, where people go. Where do they go? What's outside that door? Elsewhere. Not specific, but something. Okay, let's take a look at our questions for this chapter. Remember, you can go on the website. There's a link down below to download this worksheet, and you can give it to your class. So here are the reading comprehension questions. Yeah. Number 1, Jonas's family has signed the pledge to not become attached to Gabriel. Do you think it is possible to not become attached to the child? Yeah, it's kind of weird. Explain it, right? Question 2. Where do you think elsewhere is? What is it like? What do you think it is? What is it? What do you think happens outside that door? Where do those people go? Question 3. Where do you think... Oh, wait, sorry. Question 3. What did you learn about the names that are given to the new children at the naming ceremony? Interesting, huh? That was pretty weird. I wasn't expecting that. And question number 4. How would you feel if you had to apply to receive a spouse and your match had to be approved and monitored by the committee of elders? Yeah. What do you think? Write your answers. Write these out. Think these out. How do you feel? What are your opinions? These are comprehension questions, but also what you think. So I keep hitting my table. Ouch. I enjoyed this chapter more than the others because there was more information. I hit it again. Did you hear that? Ouch. And I'm very curious now. Before I was just... the story was weird and I wanted to finish because it was weird, right? But now the story is kind of interesting. And I want to see where this goes, What is Jonas's job going to be? Yeah. Leave me a comment. What do you think Jonas's job will be? And I'll see you for the next chapter. Bye.